Wrestling fans, a night to remember. Saturday, September 21st, the Picture Perfect Event Center, Jackson, Tennessee. Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame ceremony comes to Jackson for the first time ever. The Rivalry of the Ages presentation to Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. Also, Handsome Jimmy Valiant, the Rock and Roll Express, Danny Davis, and tons more. Exclusive meet and greet at 3:30. Event to follow. Go to MemphisWrestlingHallOfFame.com to purchase tickets. Saturday, September 21st, Picture Perfect Event Center, 2310 North Highland, Jackson. A night to remember.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Retro Wrestling from the Archive with Gene Jackson, and I'm excited for today's show. We have got a very special guest who not only is a legend in the sport of professional wrestling, he is also a renowned bass fisherman. He has his own radio show, and he's now a published author. So, without further ado, let's welcome my guest today, the host of Set the Hook with Pat Rose. Of course, who else could it be but Mr. Pat Rose? How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's going on, Gene Jackson? Good to see you, buddy. We've been trying to do this for 6 months.
Yeah, man. Getting these interviews set up sometimes is a challenge, but it's always worth it in the end. So, man, I'm excited to talk to you.
Looking forward to it, buddy. Looking forward to it.
So, I guess one of the first things we'll kind of touch on, and then we'll work our way back from that. But man, you've got a book that's coming out, or is out, I guess I should say. How was that whole process of getting this book together?
Man, it was good. It was good. It took some time, but we finally made it. A guy named Brian Boney and Kristen helped me get this thing together. Kristen done the editing, and Brian Boney done the, putting it into text. And man, it was a lot of fun. I would sit here, and I would think, like, let's go to Puerto Rico, and we'll talk about the White Knight and Super Medico and the world title, blah, blah, blah. And I would just talk, record it, and he would put it into text, and it come out pretty good. What I'm really proud of, it's not a big book, man, but what I'm really proud of is the pictures, my personal pictures that I put into the book.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are going to enjoy that. It'll bring back a lot of memories for you guys. It sure will.
I can't wait for that. We were talking before we started recording. I'm looking forward to picking one of those up next weekend in Jackson, Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, man. Appreciate that, brother.
We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But it's funny, man, because I'll talk to people and I'll mention your name, and everybody has something different. They'll say, oh, yeah, I remember Pat from Southeastern. I remember Pat from Memphis. I remember Pat. And it's like, yeah, but Pat wrestled everywhere. When you start talking to him, you're like, yeah, but he was also in WCW. He was also in the WWF. He was also in Puerto Rico. Like, you just about wrestled in every territory, didn't you, Pat? Is there anywhere that you didn't make it to that you wish you had?
Well, you know what? I remember one time there were some comments made from the fans that said, well, if Pat Rose hadn't been in that territory or whatever, it wasn't really a territory. So, and I enjoyed it, man. I was lucky. I got to go. Oh, my God. I mean, everything I've watched coming up, I was there. Like Southeastern or Southwestern. Remember that?
Yeah.
With Tully Blanchard and Gino and what was Mr. Blanchard's name?
Joe.
Joe Blanchard, yeah, I got to meet him, the whole thing. I love wrestling in Texas. And I was with Wendell Cooley, and you said you had had him on last week
Yes,
or
sir.
sometime, and we were together and lived together out there and just had a great time. But it was fun. The only thing I wish I had done was been like Black Bart. Black Bart, when he traveled, he always carried fishing rods. And I wish I had carried fishing rods and, fished all these lakes that I was near that I talk about now,
Right.
with my show. And I wish I had fished all those lakes and stuff. Sure do.
Yeah, because I mean, you crisscrossed past every one of the big lakes that you can think of. Like, yeah, that would have been that would have been some great.
Oh,
There's some missed opportunities there for sure.
even the smallmouth fishing in Michigan, man. I was up there with WCW and all that, and just
Yeah.
seeing these. I mean, I seen the lakes, but it didn't cross my mind. Hey, go get your rod and go fishing. So wish I could do that over.
You mentioned Black Bart, and a lot of people are always like, "Man, Black Bart was such a cool character, such a fun character." But now, Black Bart, and while he was a fun character, but that's not a character, is it? I mean, that's who he is, right? I mean, that's who.
Man, yeah, I think that Black Bart's Black Bart. I
Yeah,
mean, he's a badass and a super nice guy. I love him to death, man. Good guy.
yeah, he's always been so entertaining over the years, and I guess so. What I mean, it covers so much ground, but if somebody pinned you down like Pat, what's the favorite time of your career? If you had to say, what do you think is the favorite era of your career, favorite territory that you worked?
Oh God, I've got two. And it wasn't a territory; it was going into national, but probably chip with Ole and Flair booking and Southeastern down in Pensacola. I was in Louisiana, and I got a phone call from Arn Anderson, and Arn said, "Pat, give you notice. Come on down here. You got to come down here, man." And I gave my notice in Mid South and went to Southeastern, and man, just had a blast. Now here was the workload we had. Are you ready for this?
Well, let's hear it.
All right, Monday night, 250 miles to Birmingham, Alabama. Even though it was 250, you would still have time to work out. You would still have time to go to the beach and get the tan. Okay. Tuesday would be Mobile, Alabama, which was 50 miles away. So you would have time to go to the gym. You would have time to go to the beach and get that good looking tan and leave about 5 o'clock and head on over. And then you'd come back. Wednesday night, you were off. It was 2001 Space Odyssey. What that was a nightclub that like it was a dance place. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Not that we danced or anything, but we had a blast there. Got in fights and kicked people's butt and the whole deal. Uh, let's see. Thursday was Montgomery, Alabama, and then you come home. And Friday was a spot show near Dothan, Alabama. Now, Saturday was Dothan TV early in the morning. Then you'd go back to the Sheridan and hang out at the pool, rest, whatever you wanted to do.
Right.
And then that night, you would go to the Houston County Farm Center and it would sell out big. I mean, a big, huge uh, dirt floor. I mean, dirt floor. And man, I love that place. And it had a vibe of professional wrestling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of history. So you'd wrestle there, and then you'd head back to Pensacola. And during this time heading back to Pensacola, you would listen to Tailor Made Opry with Farley Taylor. Look that up. There's not many episodes of that on, but it's Tailor Made Opry with Farley Taylor. And it was like he would talk like he was at the Grand Ole Opry. You know what I mean? But it
Right.
was Joe from Dothan. And you'd listen to it as far as you could. Now, Sunday was the Municipal Auditorium right there on the water in Pensacola. I think it's tore down now, and the Wahoo Stadium is there now or something.
Yeah.
But golly, it was fun, and just repeat. But it was fun.
Now check these guys out here.
Heck yeah, that was during that time, buddy.
Exactly. Tell me a little bit about the adventures of the Rose cousins, Pat and Randy.
Oh, loved it. You know, here's how we got to Pat and Randy Rose, the Rose cousins. They tagged me with Mr. Wrestling 2 at first, and we wrestled together. We made a good team because we looked alike, and I worked hard, and 2 worked hard. Even at his age at that time, he worked hard, and we made a good team. And 2 went to the WWE or WWF at the time.
Right.
And so they unmasked me on TV and put me with Randy Rose. And me and Randy made a good team. I mean, we worked good together. Of course, I was a better wrestler, but we worked good together and just had a good time together. And it would be me, Randy Rose, and Arn running around everywhere together, riding together, the whole deal. But man, Southeastern Championship Wrestling, I loved it. Got to see Ron Fuller a few months back. My son Camden played a show in Gatlinburg. He plays country music, and he's training to be a wrestler now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, man.
I knew about the music. I didn't know about the training, so
He-
that's fun.
yeah, he's doing really good. I'm proud of him. I'm
That's
proud
awesome.
of him.
Very talented musician. I've checked out his music,
Oh,
and
thank you, brother.
and from what I understand, he's going to be performing next weekend. So I'm excited about that.
I think next Thursday he's at Barrel House Ballroom here in Chattanooga, opening up for oh my Lord, what's the name of them? Georgia Camden. What's the name of the band you're opening for? Georgia Thunderbolts. How can I
There
forget
you
those
go.
guys? I hope they don't watch this.
Big followers of old Gene Jackson, man. They're gonna see this and be upset. But
And next Saturday is Jackson, and then the following Saturday he's in at the Atlanta Motor Speedway for the fair. Going to be wrestling there,
nice.
and that's going to be his first match. So no pressure. Just Atlanta Motor Speedway at the fair. It'll be sold out. You know how that is.
Man, yeah, what a way to start your time in the business. But
Oh, I know, man.
well,
I
that's
know.
super cool. I look forward to following his career as it progresses. And you just kind of described your time in Southeastern, which had to feel almost like a vacation compared to when you left Louisiana. Now you talked about the weekly
Woo!
schedule in Southeastern. Tell us about the drives in Mid South.
Oh, it's brutal. Brutal. My first weekend wasn't so bad. I had 4 days. I was in a couple of the towns closer to Alexandria. Everybody lived in Alexandria, Louisiana. That was about midpoint for everything. But everything was way out there, like New Orleans, 200 and something miles away. Come back. Baton Rouge wasn't too bad. It was 100. Lake Charles about 150, maybe less than that. But then when you would get to Tulsa and Oklahoma City, now you wanted to be on them cards because that was your money. That's where you were going to make most of your money. But the first week I was there, I worked 4 days and made $3,500 back in the '80s. That's heavy duty money, man. And
Right.
for one, two match one, two, or three, and then you had the rock and roll, and you had midnight, and it was the start of that. So you can imagine the sellouts we went to. But the trips, oh my lord, let's see. One day we'd be in, and I don't remember the days, but one day we'd be in New Orleans. The next day we'd have to go to Oklahoma City, which is past Tulsa, north of Tulsa, and then you come back to Tulsa, and then you come back to Alexandria, about 500 miles. And this was all driving miles, man. Didn't nobody
Yeah.
fly back then. We all drove, and golly, brutal, brutal.
Yeah, man, because you're out there. I mean, you're taking these bumps every night, and then you're spending all these hours in the car. Like it's, woo, that's hard.
Yeah,
That's a hard life right there. I can just imagine what it was like when you get down there to Southeastern, and you got this time to be on the beach, and then you got a 50-mile or even a 250-mile drive. Seems like a piece
yeah,
of cake after that.
yeah, man, yeah. And I was lucky. I mean, all the guys like me. I got to ride with Cordette and Bobby and Dennis, and we just have a good time, man. It was a good time with them guys, and riding with Dutch Mantel was funny. Oh my God, he's so funny. I
I
love
don't
him
know
to
that there's a
death.
better storyteller in the world than Dutch
Oh,
Mantel.
and Dutch.
Even if they're not true, they're still just so he's so entertaining to listen to.
I talked to him about a couple months ago, and I was telling him, what I've been doing. He said, "Oh my God, that's a comedy show. You need to do a comedy show." Everything I said, comedy show. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, Dutch is great.
Oh, he is, man. He
So
is.
speaking of Dutch, you mentioned Puerto Rico earlier. Tell us a little bit about that experience working down in Puerto Rico.
Man, it was good. Ron Starr brought me in. He was doing the booking, and he and I was just somewhere together. And he brought me in, and I was doing a thing called the White Knight, which is a I look just like same mask and all as Super Medico, Jose Estrada.
Hmm.
And I worked with Jose, and man, I loved it. Me and Jose could go. I mean, we could go. Look up the White Knight and Super Medico, and there's a match there. But I got to wrestle with Invader 3, Johnny Rivera. If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, Johnny Rivera, and beat him for the WWC Junior Worlds title. And I'm having that made, and it's on the way from Pakistan now. And I
Nice.
can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait to get that replica in my hand. And but yeah, Puerto Rico was great. We worked out, stayed at the Condado, and then I moved in with Ron. Then I got my own apartment, and uh, stayed there for a long time. But we'd work out at the Sheraton right on the water, and the gym was at the top floor of the Sheraton. And everybody worked out there. You'd see Tony Atlas there. You'd see me and Ron and Jose Gonzalez and just all of them. Would work out there. But Puerto Rico was really fun, really fun.
Are the crowds as rowdy down there as they say? I mean, there's some famous
They
stories of.
rowdy, man. They rowdy. They'll throw a battery at you in a heartbeat. Another thing, when we'd go to, it didn't matter what town we went to, we had to pass this big, scary prison, man. It was freaking scary, buddy. Yeah. Mm, that thing. Ooh, you don't want to be in that thing.
I can imagine. So we're talking about next Saturday night we're going to be at this Memphis Hall of Fame event in Jackson, Tennessee. Tell me about some of your experiences working in Memphis. How did you like working in the Memphis territory?
Oh man, I totally loved it. Dundee was booking in Louisiana, and he was going back to Memphis, and he took me and Tom Pritchard with him, and put us with Sherry Martell. So when we were the Heavenly Bodies, and oh my God, me and Tom worked great together. He's something else. He was a good wrestler, and Sherry, her style and her loudness, and it was like we were a couple, like she was my girlfriend. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we just had a blast, had a good time. But I loved Memphis. I loved the Mid South Coliseum. I loved the fairgrounds in Nashville, Louisville. Got to tag with Andre the Giant back
Oh
in
wow.
the back in the Nick Goulas days in
Yeah.
Bowling Green at Beachbend Park. And Lord, it was fun. It was a heck of a time. Had a great time.
Glad you mentioned Sherry. I feel like she's really underrated. She was so talented as both a manager and as a wrestler, and she just added so much to the presentation of anybody she was associated with.
Anybody, anybody, especially Randy Savage.
Yes.
And they had fun on their interviews. The one to where he was saying no and she was saying yes, and he was saying no, and she finally said, yeah. And it stuck. So it was funny, man. She's a good girl.
We did recorded our USWA review show this morning, and we actually was reviewing the April 17th, 1993 episode of USWA where Sherry and Savage were reunited there in Memphis for Savage was coming in for a cage match with Lawler, and Sherry was coming in to wrestle Miss Texas, and so you had them together there on TV. And just man, it was so fun to see those two reunited,
Oh
both
my
as
God.
Savage as a heel again, because around that time, he was doing commentary on Raw as a good guy, and so he was in
Right.
his element, man. He's in the TV5 studio as a heel. He's beating up Jerry Lawler, and Sherry's out there just ragdolling Miss Texas all over the studio. It's like, man,
Oh, heck
it's
yeah,
like it was
man.
1985 all over again, where Savage was in there, uh, fresh out of ICW and that angle.
Yeah.
Did you work for the I know you worked. I know you worked for Goulas, as you mentioned. Did you work for the Poffos any?
No, I never did. I never did. I never did.
So how was it, in the Goulas days in comparison? So when you came back and worked for Jerry Jarrett, just a completely different time, or just
Yeah. Yeah, it was, my first match was at WDEF TV 12 here in Chattanooga with Nick Goulas, and they let me come in now. I've been doing Set the Hook for 17 years, and they've been letting me come in, I know, at least 10 years and push a show, but still go to WDEF. But that was my first match. That was my first match was with Ken Lucas. You couldn't ask for a better teacher. And the only thing I did was listen. We'd do the top wrist lock, and I'd pull his hair, and he'd fight up. And I got a little heat on him. He made a comeback, shot me in, got me in the sleeper. So, man, but yeah, Nick Goulas was a learning experience. I had no idea what I was doing. And Nick put the NWA Mid America tag belts, which I got a replica of it, and with me and Rocky Brewer, and we beat the Blonde Bombers. And they used to call us ham and eggers because that's what we were. Or that's what I was. Rocky wasn't. He was experienced. But yeah, used to call us ham and eggers, and we'd have good matches, but it sometimes get hard to get there because I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. So
We'll return after these messages.
So this is a promotion that don't get talked about a lot, and I discovered I remember reading about it years ago, but I lived in North Mississippi. I didn't have access to it on TV, and I didn't really get to see much of it till years later in the tape trading days. And I don't get to talk very often to anybody who was there. But WOW Wrestling out of Alabama in the late '80s, coming out of the Continental time. Tell me a little bit about that promotion.
W.O.W. It was from Pensacola on Border Street. Had the Border Street Arena. Let's see, Rip Tyler and Gino Sanazaro, who was Flash Monroe, and Mr. Ito from Japan. Japan funded all that.
Okay.
So, needless to say, we got paid pretty damn good. But it was fun. We would run, let's see, Pensacola at the auditorium, and just all around like Chipley and Crestview, and did the Expo Center in Mobile and Mississippi. There was a town. Where's Stan Frazier from?
Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Okay, we do Philadelphia. There's another name. It was a weird name, Mississippi town. But anyway, we run there, and just all over Greenville, Mississippi, the whole deal. Yeah, it was fun. You're from North Mississippi?
Yeah, I'm originally from Aberdeen, up between Tupelo and Columbus. Now, I live in Gadsden, Alabama now, but I grew up in Aberdeen, Mississippi.
You ever heard of the North Mississippi All-Stars?
Yes, I sure have.
They were in Chattanooga not long ago. I got to go see them.
Oh, nice. That's
Love
awesome.
them.
Now, in W.O.W., you were a Fargo down there, were you not?
Got to do the Fargo gimmick, and it was me. Let's see. The first one was me and Ken Timms, and then they put me and Marcel Pringle together. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's he's great. He's good on that mic and funny in the ring, and I just love tagging with him. I still talk to him today, man. He's still in Mobile. He's retired and just hangs out.
Oh, wow. I'd love to talk to him sometime. That would be fun.
Oh, that'd be great. I'll hook you up.
Oh, please. That would be, man, I'd appreciate that. Because, yeah, I've gotten to see some of his stuff over the years and different promotions he was in. And like I say, I found quite a few shows. Oh, yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. He was one of those guys where he was a name in a magazine for years that I read his name, but I never really got to see him. And then when I started trading tapes, I found a good chunk of the W.O.W. shows and watched them. And I want to say that he was in that 5-Star Wrestling out of Louisiana, perhaps.
I don't know.
But I've seen him off and on some different things. But I was always impressed with him. And there was some really good talent in W.O.W. You know, you guys were there, and then you had Bob Holly was just starting out down there. You had Jerry Stubbs and Ken Wayne and Kokina the Samoan, I think.
Yeah.
Gosh, a lot of people. It wasn't around a long time, but a lot of talent came through there in the time that it was there.
You talking about good for his size? Kokina was great.
Oh yeah.
Oh, my God. And I'm talking back when he was Kokina. He could move, he could bump, he could do anything. Size didn't matter.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, and I mean, and the fact that he could move the way he did once he got as big as he did, it made the whole sumo gimmick work. But like you say, in those days, when he was still a large man, he was over 350 pounds, but man, he could move like the Tonga Kid, and there he was 4 times his size.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, me and Two, and I think there's still tapes on this, but me and Two hurt Tonga Kid when he was going to WWF. And, man, what a career he had. He was great.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize he had that run in Southeastern before he went up there. He was down there in Southeastern teaming with what was it, Scott Armstrong and Johnny
Rat
Rick?
Patrol.
The Rat Patrol. Good stuff, man. God, it's such good memories of all that, man.
I know,
Southeastern,
man.
Continental, Memphis. I've kind of gotten to where now I've settled into just watching tapes of all the stuff I love. I don't watch a lot of the current stuff because I don't want to be one of these guys that just does a podcast every week griping about the new stuff. So I just kind of watch the stuff that I love, and I check out the new stuff here and there, but not as religiously as I used to, you know.
I'll say this, Gene Jackson. The wrestling training has changed. The wrestlers have changed. Nobody works out anymore. You can be skinny as a board and be a wrestler. It's just not the same. And, you know, I was, never mind. I'm not going to tell that story. I went crazy last week for a minute, but I just couldn't take it anymore. They'll do something and they'll ask, how do you feel about that? How do you like that? It don't make a damn how you feel. You know what I mean? Back in the day with the shooters, Ron Fuller, name some of the Fuller family.
Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden.
That would stretch your butt. Those guys wouldn't stretch your butt, but
Buddy Fuller.
The guys before them, Buddy and Herb Welch, and, you know, who trained David Schultz, those guys would stretch your ass and they wouldn't give a shit how you felt. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Danny Davis come out of that training too, right? Didn't Nightmare Danny Davis train towards the end of the Welch's farm up there?
Yeah. I think he did. Matter of fact, I got to talk to Danny. It was like we didn't even miss a lick, man.
What a great guy Danny is, and he's going in the Hall of Fame next week too, and so deserved.
Yeah.
And he's had a hand in training so many like big stars in the last 20 years. His fingerprints is going to be on the business for forever, decades to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Sheik, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
So talking about what we were just saying, with all the experience that you've had, the career you've had in wrestling, what advice are you giving Camden of like, hey man, you're breaking into this, and you got to kind of deal with the world that we live in now, as far as wrestling goes, and just the world in general. And like you said, the training's different, the guys are different, the attitude is different as far as the mindset that people come in with. What kind of advice are you giving him to kind of navigate that, to be successful within the constraints of what's going on, but to still kind of be true to what wrestling's always been for you, at least?
Well, even right now, he's a smart kid, and we've done angles with him because I knew he could do it. And this is going to be his first match coming up. But during the training part, he locks up great. He does this great. And I tell him, it don't make a shit what the other guy can do. You take care of yourself. I'm sorry, but it's a selfish business. And he gets that. And he knows when to turn it on and be a little stiff and make them do what they want you to do, or what you want them to do.
Right.
He knows that. He gets that. But if he's working with a seasoned veteran, he understands too to listen. Shut your mouth and listen. And he understands that. So he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. But he hadn't got in his head yet that he's got to be in the gym every day. Every day he's got to be in the gym. And if you're going to be successful, and he's going to be successful, he's doing a lot of physical stuff now and stuff like that. And I wish I had him in the gym earlier. I wish I would have went and worked out with him earlier, like the Armstrongs. It was a way of life for them. I mean, everybody in the whole house, even Gail, was in shape. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, bless his heart. I mean, Bob, in his later years, was in better shape than most. He would go do these shows, when he's in his 70s by then, and he was in better shape than half the young guys on the card.
That's right.
And that's after smoking a pack of cigarettes outside the building before he came in.
Oh, love Bullet
machine,
Bob,
man. Oh yeah, just the Armstrongs are just some of the best people in the world.
They are. Totally agree. Love those guys.
So we'll put a little picture on the screen. So here's a picture of you in the ring with Rob Van Dam and WCW. Tell us a little bit about working for WCW. What your experience was working for them, and did you enjoy it, or just kind of a paycheck?
I loved it. I was on my way out. I'd already went to the butcher, to cover up the body. But they would use me good. Jody would book me everywhere and give me trans money and the whole deal. And I got to wrestle with Rob Van Dam. That was his first match coming to WCW. And, I guess they thought I'd make him look good, which I sure tried to. And I was on the what dadgummit.
That DVD they put out, right?
Yeah, that's it. The DVD.
I remember that.
Yeah. I was on the DVD but he was a good guy, and working for WCW, I loved it. It was a lot of fun. Made some good money.
In later years, people, knocked WCW and, complained about this and that. But I don't know. I was always more of a WCW fan than I was WWF back in those days. I loved it from the 80s up to the 90s.
It was more wrestling than up north, So.
And to me, that was their downfall when they started trying to replicate the WWF style, and they moved away from the wrestling, and they started having the silly movie, vignettes and goofy characters, and trying to copy that when they start having lumberjacks and ding dong and all this silly stuff, and it's like, come on, man, dude, just stick to what you guys do best, and
Right.
but when you saw the success that Vince was having, I guess it was hard to not gravitate towards that to some degree. And you did some work up there. How was your experience working with the WWF?
It was good there. Got to meet Vince. I guess he knew who I was. He shook my hand, and got to meet Hulk Hogan for the first time. And like I said, I was on my way out there, and I did a run with him, Huntsville, Nashville, and Chattanooga, and done some other things with them. But I remember that because Hawk of the Road Warriors traveled with me.
Mm-hmm.
And man, good conversations. I love Hawk to death. Me and Animal, we knew each other, but it wasn't like me and Hawk.
Yeah.
And loved Hawk to death. He was a good person, really good person, and he done some things for me that other guys wouldn't do. So.
That's really cool to hear because, a lot of people, you only see these guys on TV in this road warrior persona. And it's hard.
Right.
It's hard for some people to even envision Hawk having a conversation with somebody, the guy without the face paint in the car, traveling to the towns and stuff. You never got to see that side of him. So it's good to hear that, there was a good guy, in there and he
Yeah,
treated
there
people
was.
well. And that's awesome.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Great guy. What a team, huh?
Oh my goodness. I mean, they're like the personification of the 80s. Like to me, if somebody's like, describe the 80s, not just 80s wrestling, but
Totally
just
agree.
the 80s. I mean, you just hold up a picture of the Road
The
Warriors.
Road Warriors.
You're like, this is what the 80s was about right here. Because I mean, that
There you
represents
go, buddy.
wrestling, movies, TV, pop culture. Like they summed it all up, man. They came along at just the right time.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy the money that those guys drew. I mean, people will say, "Oh, they made all this money and they didn't want to do jobs," but like, my gosh, man, the money that they made, promoters, people can't fathom.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, man. That's right.
So, as you was winding down with wrestling, at what point did I mean, you talked about how you wish you'd brought the fishing rods along, so I'm sure you've always been a fan of fishing, but at what point did you see it as a viable, like, hey man, we can transition out of wrestling and start doing this fishing for more than just a fun hobby?
Well, you know what I did when I got out of wrestling? I started fishing tournaments, and I was fishing Bassmaster, and this was when they had what they call a co-angler, which is a guy that fishes from the back of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to do the co-angler thing, and I got to fish with a lot of good bass pros. Or what time I fished, I was actually watching them. But and a guy from church named Evan Stone owns a little radio station here in Trenton, Georgia, where I live. And he said, "Pat, why don't you put together a fishing show?" And I said, "Okay, sure." And I started having guests like Bill Dance and Ray Scott. And I don't know if you've heard of any of these people, but
Oh, my dad's like a huge, like big, I mean, tournament fisherman as far as like local tournaments. And he went to some of the Bassmaster stuff. And so I went with him to like some like the Bassmaster Classics, like in Birmingham
yeah,
and stuff. So I got to meet
yeah.
like Bill Dance and Hank Parker and a lot of these guys.
Oh,
So yeah, I
good.
recognize a lot of these names that you
Yeah,
saying,
man.
man.
I was having these guys. Matter of fact, in Birmingham, we did set the hook on the Bass Pro stage.
Oh
And I
yeah.
looked out, and there were so many people there listening to us, and that was just cool. But Like I said, Evan wanted me to start a radio show, so I started having guests like that, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm on this. Well, it was 50,000 watts, which is cool, but I needed to take it to Chattanooga, and there was a station called ESPN 105.1 The Zone, which they changed call letters now, but it was 105.1 The Zone, and we stayed on there for many, many years. And just, as I would work, as I would have time, I would call radio stations and, hey, this is Pat Rose, ex-pro wrestler. I got a radio show. You ever heard of me? Some guys would say yes. Some guys would say no. Now, when they say yes, you can back out a little bit and work on the name.
Right.
And then if they say no, you got to work a little bit and sell them on what you got. And right now we're on 36 radio stations. We do a podcast and we record it here live. When COVID hit, we bought there it is. We bought the equipment to do the show. And man, it's been a lot of fun. Got some good sponsors and doing pretty good with it. Doing really good with it. And we've had everybody from Kevin Van Dam to the the veterans of the sport that. And one thing I noticed, man, in professional wrestling, there's that respect that you must have for the guys that came before you.
Right.
There's not that respect in the world of bass fishing for the guys that come before those guys. It's just not there. And I was talking to, I don't know who I was talking to. It was on the show, and I explained that, and he said, yeah, you're right. There's not. And there should be, because, if it wasn't for Guido Hibden, if it wasn't for, Bill Dance, Jimmy Houston, Hank Parker, Kevin Van Dam, there wouldn't be no bass fishing, especially with Ray Scott. Ray Scott invented tournament bass fishing.
Right.
And, I just, that bothers me. I don't like that. I don't like that.
And I don't understand it. If you pursue something and you love something, how do you not respect the people who made it possible?
They're what I see coming in is they're rich kids that mommy and daddy can buy them $100,000 boat with the electronics, and you're a Bass Pro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
That
they
makes
can pay
sense.
their entry fees. If you can pay the entry fees, you're in. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just my thoughts on it. And
No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's the only real explanation.
Yeah.
Because if you had to learn your craft just like anything else, if you actually had to work at something and learn it, then you would respect people. But when it's easy, I mean, that's everything in life.
Yeah.
Bass
And you got to
fishing,
work
like anything
for
else.
it.
If you don't work for it, you don't respect it, and this is what we're stuck with.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Gene. You're right.
There's a look at there's Pat out there. Where would that be?
That was on Nickajack, and I was pushing ESPN 105.1 The Zone.
Nice.
Heck yeah.
Well, before we wrap this up, let's talk about From the Ring to the Reel, the Pat Rose story. We kind of touched on it here in the beginning, but if people want to be able to read this book, Pat, what is the best way they can go about procuring a copy of this book?
Man, just go to Facebook, Pat Rose, and got the same little deal up with the little promo card, I guess you would call it. And just instant message me, man. And look for Camden Smith Music and instant message him. He's been selling these things off the hook for me, man. He's been working hard. But I'll have you a copy and have a few copies with me at the big show in Jackson, man. Cannot wait.
Awesome. And speaking of that, take a look at this guy right here.
Heck,
Pat,
yeah.
Pat there in the shades. He's got the satin jacket on, looking good. And he's going to be there next Saturday, September 21st. The meet and greet starts at 3:30 p.m. at the Picture Perfect Event Center on 2310 North Highland Avenue in Jackson. You can get your tickets for that at MemphisWrestlingHallOfFame.com, or you can walk up and get them at the door. But I would get them in advance, Pat, because I don't know. They may not still have them at the door because, man, all the stars, I mean, you can speak to this. I mean, the amount of stars they've got booked for this thing, it's all through the generations of Memphis wrestling from back in the 70s and 80s with, guys like Bill Dundee, Jerry Lawler, Handsome Jimmy Valiant, up through the...
Let me tell you something, man. You know what? I guess the fans will see me going as Pat Rose, but I'm going to be marking out, brother. Supposed to set up a table and sell gimmicks, but I don't know if I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to go to everybody else's table and hang out and talk and take pictures and just mark out, man. I can't wait.
Nothing wrong with
to
that,
see
man.
These guys, man, like Jimmy Valiant. I ain't seen him in 100 years. He probably don't even know who I am anymore, but I used to wrestle him all the time. And I can't wait to talk to Dundee and Lawler and golly, Doug Gilbert and Jamie Dundee and
Rock and Roll Express is going to be there.
Rock and Roll.
Tommy Rich.
And Kerry, man. Have you been keeping up with Kerry Morton?
I have, man. I remember when Kerry was coming with Ricky to the Charlotte Fan Fest over there as just a young man singing the national anthem before the shows. And here he's been NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion, man. That's pretty cool.
That is really cool. And I got a good picture of Kerry when he was about 11 and Camden when he was about 9, and they were locking up in the ring. It was so funny.
Man, and who's to say that we're not going to be seeing that in the ring again sooner or later?
That'd be great.
Man. I like to say I look forward to keeping up with Camden's journey, through the wrestling business, and we'll have to have him on here after he gets a few matches under his belts and ask him how it's going and how he's enjoying the experience.
Heck yeah.
Well, Pat, thank you for your time, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I've been looking forward to this. I'm excited to read your book. I'm excited to actually meet you in person next Saturday there in Jackson.
Buddy.
And I'm going to be marking out right alongside of you of all these other great wrestling stars, man.
We'll be fanboying it or whatever they call it.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be the deal. Well, Pat, take care of yourself, man. Have a safe trip there, and we will see you next Saturday in Jackson, Tennessee.
All right, Gene Jackson, I appreciate you. I love you, buddy.
Love you too, man. Take care. Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.